I've come to realize in 2023 that podcasting is very important, essential for communicating who you are as a professional. Maybe more important than a job interview or a one-on-one conversation in a professional setting. Think about it. When are you the most candid? When are you the most obvious? When are you most in command of the conversation? Not in an interview where you have put your best foot forward, you are thinking specifically about what you want to communicate, and you're trying to represent yourself in your best light possible. But on a podcast, you're comfortable, you're relaxed. Maybe it's Saturday, maybe you're in a t-shirt, maybe you're in a room that feels comfortable, maybe you're the host and so you feel in control. All of these things lead to you being more authentic and in more command of the subject if you have the expertise, which makes you a subject matter expert, than when you are in a direct interview. Let's talk about that today on the podcast. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means, the Saturday Morning Hustle Podcast. No hyperbolic hustle culture, just brutally honest, straightforward business advice and motivation every Saturday for entrepreneurs, business owners, or anyone pursuing success. You can't just work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday and hope to become the next big thing. You gotta work smart, work hard, and put in extra effort while everyone else is sleeping, playing games, or wasting time. Maximize bonus time to get more work done. This podcast is for anyone willing to come in early, stay late, hustle on the weekend to be truly great. That's right, guys. I think podcast conversations, what you learn from listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video, whether the person is the host, like I'm the host of this podcast and I'm solo 99% of the time, whether it's me interviewing someone else, like I do on my business podcast, the Golden Group Strategic Growth Podcast. I interview other entrepreneurs and business owners, etc. Or the other podcast I host, the third podcast I host, the Oklahoma Venture Forum podcast, the OVF podcast. Also an interview style with pitch presenters, people who have startups that they're pitching for economic resources and otherwise, and our main presenters, our main speakers, people who are actual subject matter experts, and I'm trying to have a conversation with them about their area of expertise, not my area of expertise necessarily. So those are 3 examples of how if someone was going to interview me or research me or find out more about me, the podcast content, I think right now, 2023, the podcast content is more valuable, more powerful, and more exemplary of who I am as a person, my subject matter expertise, than a direct one-on-one interview, whether it is for a job opportunity, for a client, working relationship potential, for maybe being put on a board or being asked to mentor or whatever it is. In those situations, those formal situations where you sit kind of across the desk from a person or 2 or 3, whether it's just the people talking in the room, maybe there's someone zooming in, maybe there's a video camera recording the thing for posterity and for other people to see as well. But formal situations like a job interview or like a prospective client interview are often planned out and thought ahead. And again, you have an agenda, you have a goal in mind. You are trying to achieve something, which is, in that case, present yourself in the best light. Look the smartest, the most in command, the most prepared, the most professional. All good things. You should keep doing that. When you have job interviews, etc., keep doing those things. But if you really want to find out who a real person is, you can go look at their social media. That's a good first step, but I don't think you should stop there, especially, I want to drive this point home. If you are hiring someone for an executive position or going to bring someone in who's going to be consulting with you or advising you or mentoring you at really high levels, if you really want to know who they are and understand who they are, because social media is also, there's a lot of fronting going on social media, a lot of people just putting their best foot forward there as well. You guys know that. But look at any podcast that they're on. If they're the host or a guest or a panelist or an interviewer or an interviewee, in those situations, even though they are still trying to put their best foot forward, they're still trying to seem smart and hopefully talking about things that they do understand and know. You don't want me coming on a podcast talking about golf or marine biology or botany, because I don't know anything about any of those subjects. But I could go on a podcast and talk about all types of business, entrepreneurial, marketing, communication, content type subjects with ease, with expertise. And so, but the difference between that and a formal conversation, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping around, this is a pretty good example though, because when someone is hosting a podcast or they're a guest on a podcast, again, they're trying to put their best foot forward. They're trying to look good and smart and professional, but there's a comfort level. There's an ease because it's a conversation between people. It's not a job interview. It's not a client prospectus. It's not a formal process. Even if it's in a studio, the lights and the camera and the crew, it's still not the same scenario. And even better, you can find podcast or video interviews or even candid videos, whether it's on their social media, on their YouTube channels, on the podcast platforms themselves, etc. You know, I have all kinds of websites and social media associated with all of the podcasts I just mentioned earlier, and I'm a guest on a lot of podcasts. But finding that person speaking in their own voice, not thinking about impressing a person for a specific job or a client for a specific role you want to play for them or an advisory situation, but just speaking on topics, speaking about who they are, speaking about their experiences, how they relate to the person asking the questions of the person the questions you're being asked of others, the interviewer. That's what I was trying to say there. How they handle when they mess up, like I just did, how they handle stress and pressure. Are they listening to the questions and answering them honestly and directly, or are they skirting the questions? Are they trying to put their own agenda forward, which is often what happens in an interview? You know, how many times have you been told if you're going to a job interview and they say, you know, what's one of your greatest weaknesses, or what would you like to work on about yourself? You're supposed to turn it around and make it a strength. You know, I'm a workaholic. I try too hard. You know, all those little tricks that they tell us in job interviews. And it's the same thing in the conversation when I'm interviewing a prospective client. I'm going to try to tell them what they want to hear or what they need to hear in order for us to begin a working relationship. In all of these situations, someone has that agenda and the ideas about how to get around questions or how to put the ideas in the listener's head that they need or want from them. In a podcast interview, in a subject matter conversation, in a opportunity for someone to maybe be more casual, more relaxed, even if they're really good podcasters, they even forget that a camera's there or a microphone's there and they're just having conversations with the people in the room. And those things can be very formal, from business and organizational conversations through casual entertainment, just personal history, etc. There's so many varieties and so many options and so many opportunities for you, the person trying to find out more about the other person, to really get who they are and what their actual subject matter expertise is, how well they communicate with other people, not just you. You know, sometimes you interview someone and you think that didn't go well, and I don't think they understood me. I don't think maybe I communicated well, and they'll tell you later they thought it was great, that they received all the information. So sometimes you have a version of it. It's different than the other person. But watching 2 or 3 other people communicate with each other, with you not in the room, with you just listening on the podcast or watching on a video, allows you to be more subjective. It takes pressure off of you as the interviewer or the researcher or the person trying to learn. And it allows you to focus on what the person is communicating, how they're communicating it, how they treat other people, how conversational they are, how communicative they are, and how much their actual personality and their actual expertise and their ability to communicate that connects back to whether it's their resume, their cover letter, their business marketing, pre-interview conversations, or maybe even you could compare it to a formal interview conversation you've had with them and see if they are the same person or if they're just putting that false front up, that professional air, you know, put on the suit and tie and get dressed up and be formal with you Or are they like that all the time? Or do they have a variety to themselves? And the more you can find out about people, the more you can find out honestly about people and candidly about people, their ability to talk, to communicate, to lead a conversation, whether it's one people, two people, three people, a panel, or what we're doing here, one-on-one, all of those are opportunities for you to learn more about that person, about their abilities, about their communication style, about who they are as a person and a potential leader, a potential collaborator, a potential employee, employer, a potential member of your leadership team, a potential partner in whatever you're trying to do moving forward. So think about not just doing formal interviews, not just doing formal communication, but finding ways to find examples of people's candid communication. Again, obviously, social media, there's plenty of opportunities there. Some people are more candid on social media than others, so we all take that with a grain of salt. Some people only put the best stuff forward. Some people are warts and all. I have friends out there who will put everything on social media, and I would say, I don't really do it that much. And then I know people who are much more buttoned up, much more formal, much more everything was taken by a professional photographer type content that's on social media. So there's a range of that, but think about social media, but then also think about podcast, whether they're hosting or appearing as a guest, video interviews, and go further from the podcast. You could find their websites, whether it's a business website, a personal website, again, extensions of their social media. Obviously, the Saturday Morning Hustle has its own website, SaturdayMorningHustle.com. You guys know that. I talk about that all the time. But there's also additional content there as well that would give you further insights as to the host of this program. So if you were to say, this podcast makes a lot of sense to me, you would go to SaturdayMorningHustle.com. You could find the Balance series there, right? We've talked about that this last couple of weeks. Balance series, 12 parts, formal, 30-minute, full conversations with notes, etc. So that's a deeper conversation with, gives you a different aspect of who the host of the Saturday Morning Hustle is. There's also the 5-part series, marketing, sales, customer service, etc. That's also on the website as well. That gives you another insight that was a lot more business focused, a lot less hustle grind that we do typically in the Saturday Morning Hustle. So you get that as well. I've done 1 or 2 interviews on the Saturday Morning Hustle and the throwback, some of the stuff from when I was very early. So that gives you a pretty good round idea of who I am. If you were, as an example, if you're trying to learn more about a person, then you look into, I mentioned the Golden Group's Strategic Growth Podcast. You would go to that website, thegoldengroup.com. You would find that podcast there. Obviously, there's tons of information, tons of marketing content, but also tons and tons and tons of videos and podcast episodes, hundreds there. Over 160, I think, of the Strategic Growth Podcast. We're well over 300 on the Saturday Morning Hustle. Another example to see someone like myself, my business partner, Pritchard, who's a guest on, or the co-host on most of those episodes, and in the last 25 or so have been interviews with people in the community, how I interact with my business partner, how I interact with people I'm interviewing from the community. Again, it gives you another side to who the person is that you're learning more about. In my case, I have the opportunity to host a third podcast, the Oklahoma Venture Forum, OVF podcast. OVF.org is where you find that website, and you find that podcast and those video series. And again, it's an interview style, but it's people that I usually don't know at all, and I meet them the day that we're doing the podcast itself. They have a formal program that they're working on if they're a main presenter, and if they're a pitch presenter, they have their pitch and the explanation of their startup, and they're looking to raise capital. And so that's an even more formal conversation, and I attempt to ask good questions and to be very communicative there, because I'm trying to support those startup businesses. And the people who present at OVF are typically people who are really achieving things in the world. It's kind of, they've achieved where I'd like to be myself. And so it's a different conversation with them where I'm trying to ask them questions where I can learn and you can learn along with me. And these are just some examples. And then, of course, I'm a guest on tons of podcasts as well. And I make playlists on YouTube, again, from the Golden Group website, from the Saturday Morning Hustle website, from my own personal website, just my name, kylegolding.com. There are playlists, there's interview examples, me being interviewed by other people, me interviewing them, etc. There's so much depth there as to how you can learn about a person before you go into business with them, before you hire them, before you maybe reach out to them to be a mentor, or even to be just a guest on your podcast or a collaborator in a project, whether it's paid, non-paid, doesn't matter. There's so much opportunity for you to learn about people. And then the flip side, if you are considering making a podcast, if you're a podcaster a little bit, if you have as many podcasts as I do, really think about how you authentically present yourself. We've talked about authenticity a lot on this podcast. You know that. So how can you authentically present yourself as a podcast host, as a podcast guest, as an interview guest on video shows, the use of your social media, etc.? How much more can you be authentic? How can you share more about you, who you are, about the subjects that you have passion for, that you have information about, your expertise, your experience, how you can connect to people, relate to people, communicate with people, educate people, motivate people. You can do all that. So think about how you can be better at communicating, at motivating, at inspired, at connecting with other people through these types of mediums. And then when you're on the flip side, when you're trying to learn about other people, when you're trying to find people to work with, collaborate, hire, whatever it is, put on a community board, just learn from, dig deeper past their social media, dig deeper past their marketing websites, look into all types of podcasts and video conversations. And the more casual, the more conversational, the less formal that you can find, the more you'll learn about that person. And the more you can learn about yourself and your own communication style and how you present yourself to the world and how you are authentic in the things you have passion and desire to do, the things you have experience with, and how you share yourself with others, which then allow all of us to understand each other better, which then allows all of us to work better, help each other, benefit each other, which benefits the community, which benefits where we all live. And that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. Thank you guys for checking out the podcast today. See you next week. Thanks for listening. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment, leave a review, share with a friend. I would really appreciate that. Follow and engage on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and this Saturday Morning Hustle Facebook fan page. All the information, all the past episodes, all the Saturday Morning Hustle, Entrepreneur AF, and Coffee and Donuts swag is at SaturdayMorningHustle.com. See you next week.